Good morning, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. It is what I like to refer to as sunburn weather here in Portland, Oregon. It is super sunny and quite warm, but not so hot that I get out of the sun in enough time. So I thought I would do this introduction in the shade and be responsible and protect myself. But I'm actually not going to be talking about my neighbor's arborvitae hedge today. I actually want to talk about my pawpaw guilds. And y'all had asked, what do I plant around my pawpaw trees? And I'm trying to get to a spring tour of all of my fruit trees and nut trees and what companion planting I use around them. So when we talk about guilds, what we're referring to is the permaculture system of supporting our fruit and nut trees or berry bushes with a surrounding of companion plants that help support them, help bring in beneficial insects, help deter pests, help provide additional food and medicinal and aesthetic yields for the gardener. So I've got 3 pawpaw trees, and later in the summer when my plants are looking more abundant and things are really up and going for the year, I'm going to show you each of the 3 pawpaw guilds because they look very different because of where my plants are placed and because what I needed out of the guilds. And I will show you that because it's going to, I hope, encourage you to see there's a lot of freedom in guild design. There's a lot of flexibility. So for 3 of the same tree species, I have radically different looking guilds. The pawpaw guild I'm going to be working on today is a Rappahannock improved Peterson variety pawpaw. And I'm redoing the guild. So this is a bed where it's kind of been in transition. You might have seen it recently in my cattle panel arch video. And I have taken out some of the support plants because they weren't working for me. And I'm gonna be adding new ones and moving around some of the existing ones. So I thought this is a great time to show y'all what you can do with a fruit guild. Now, a little caveat here. With the plants that I'm planting today, it is very warm and sunny. This is not an ideal time to be transplanting anything. Please consider doing as I say and not as I do. If you have the opportunity to transplant things out, pick the evening. If it's warm and sunny where you are, pick the evening time, water them in really well, or wait for an overcast, hopefully drizzly day to plant out your transplants. However, I'm going to be watering these in super well and giving them an extra drink tonight, so they should do fine, but it's not ideal. I don't want you to think that my example here is what you should be doing. But for the purposes of when I have time in my day, when my kids aren't needing help with their math lessons and I don't have to shuttle anybody anywhere, this is when I have time to work in the garden, so this is when I'm going to do it. I talk a lot about how we have to do permaculture in the real world, and sometimes that means working in less than ideal situations. So let me flip the camera around and just show you this pawpaw tree and talk you through some of the plants that I'm going to be putting in the guild. And then I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okie dokie, let's contextualize this pawpaw tree. It is sitting in my front yard. Here is my peach tree. Here is my Juliet bush cherry. And right behind it is this pawpaw. Okay, and here's the cattle panel arch, goji berries, other pawpaw back there. I promise you I will go over it later. This pawpaw here is hopefully going to be setting some good fruit this year. Now this pawpaw used to have different plants at the bottom of it, and I took a lot of them out in the fall, and then obviously recently took out a honeyberry bush that was here next to it. I have some Egyptian walking onions I just transplanted in. I have some remnants of daffodils. I like daffodils because they encourage a fungal dominated soil and discourage grass, and I also think they're pretty. But as I have said before, I'm cheap. I work on a real tight budget, so I planted 1 daffodil and they slowly multiply. So I'm gonna end up with 6, these are 2 together, 6 daffodils here within a couple years of starting them. And my hope is that it will fill in around here and I will start transplanting them out and make a bigger swath. I love to say swath. I love swaths of beautiful plants. So if we look down the trunk here, right at the base of the tree, I have a Russian Bocking 14 comfrey plant. I do not remember planting this here, but since Russian Bocking 14 comfrey is sterile, either myself or a child or a critter must have moved a root cutting here. If I think about good design, I would not be putting my comfrey here where the sun comes in this way. Comfrey gets quite tall and would shade whatever is behind it. So I'm gonna move this. We'll see if I can get all the root chunks out or not. Might be a little dicey. I've also got loads and loads of native coastal strawberry in here that will fill in and help provide quite a bit of ground cover. And I have volunteer calendula. I let my calendula freely self-sow around the garden. Great bee food, great bumblebee food, great for smothering and outcompeting other weeds. Great for making hair rinses and salves as well, really soothing to the skin. All right, let's talk about what I want to add to this guild that's not already there. I've got my daffodils, which will spread slowly. I have my comfrey, which I'm going to move to another spot in the guild. I have my strawberries, my native strawberries, which will fill in throughout the summer and create more shade and ground cover and suppress weeds. I have my Egyptian walking onions, which I might move, we'll see. And I have volunteer annual calendula. Let's talk about the things that I'm going to add. Let me grab some down here. So the first thing I'm gonna add is I really like hardy geraniums, crane's bill geraniums. I have them all over the garden. They are fantastic bee food and they flower for a long period. If they finish flowering, you can cut them back and they will flower for a second wave later in the year. They're also a good ground cover. They spread out and they really shade that ground, conserve water, and they suppress weeds. So I got this one. I've never seen it before. Okay, so first of all, let me just say that I did splurge a little bit at the plant nursery. Sometimes I start things from seed and sometimes I buy potted plants. I got this, a geranium called Dark Rider, because I had never seen this lovely dark foliage before. And I thought, well, this is a good pick. It's a good contrast to what I have going on. Lots and lots of green. This is Monarda bee balm, which sometimes I start from seed and sometimes I just buy starts. It's a short-lived perennial in my climate, meaning every 5 years or so I have to restart the plant. Now, if we have a super hard winter, sometimes it doesn't come back at all. This is Eastern bee balm, which is a really nice variety that I thought would go well with that Dark Rider geranium because it has purple underside to the leaves, and the flowers are a very light lavender color, unlike most of the bee balms, which are more in a red to pink range. So I thought this will be great. It will really bring in the butterflies and the bees. It is a taller plant, so it can go behind my geranium. Also, because I'm just a sucker for scabiosa, I got a blue scabious, Fama Deep Blue. Scabiosa are really great at bringing in a lot of the beneficial parasitoid wasps and some of the native smaller solitary bees. Also, a little bit taller plant will provide visual interest. And again, I like to do my guilds with a lot of medicinal and additional food crop plants, but I really want to focus on pollinators. As a beekeeper, as somebody who's really invested in the plight of our native bees, I want to have a continual succession of a huge diversity of flowers. Plus, I really like a cottage garden aesthetic, and so I want lots of flowers. I want some of those traditional old types of flowers that you would find in an English cottage garden, and scabiosa is one of those. Okay, last for my pickups at the plant nursery yesterday. This is yarrow. And you might say, well, Angela, I've seen your other videos. You have gobs of yarrow in your garden. I have a lot of the native white yarrow. And in my rain garden, I have a bright red variety. And actually down by my chicken run, I have a bright red variety as well. This is a new vintage violet variety, which is more of a, it's not really violet, it's more of a magenta color. And it's a little bit lower growing variety of yarrow. And so I thought it would be a good complement. Really like yarrow for the fact that bees and wasps and especially butterflies love it, but also because it spreads and forms a nice big clump swath. And it really does a good job of out-competing weeds in my garden. And those are the 4 things that I have bought at the plant nursery, and I'm going to incorporate those into my guild and then add some other things as well. So let's go back over and check out where I want to put these in the garden. So here we are back at the pawpaw tree. Underneath it, I have set out where I'm going to plant the plants. I have 2 extra containers, upside down inverted here, for plants that are on order or are still too small to plant out, and I want to talk about those first. So right here, I'm going to put my Turkish rocket, one of the Turkish rocket plants. You can check out my video. They're a type of perennial broccoli substitute. They're just not big enough to put out yet, but that's where they're gonna go. They get not as tall as my scabiosa, but taller than my geranium. So as we're looking at the movement of the sun in this way, they will be an appropriate choice to put here. Also, they get just the right amount of sun in this spot. Back here is going to be a lovage plant. I love lovage. It is a perennial celery. It is beautiful. It has umbel-shaped blossoms, really good, strong celery flavor early in the year. Beautiful, hardy plant. I have some starts going of those. They're just not ready to go out in the garden yet. My other lovage in other parts of the garden actually died. They were 12 years old and reached the end of their lifespan, so I had to start some new ones. But that will be going there. In front of it, we have the scabiosa to provide a different shape foliage and provide those nice flowers. Back here, I have put my bee balm because it will get a little bit taller than the scabious. And behind it, I have moved my comfrey from this spot up here. And I think I got all of the pieces of root, fingers crossed. So that's gonna be the tallest of the plants, or on par with the bee balm. And so it will be back here. And I can use it for chop and drop for my pawpaw and for my feijoa. Now I have my cranesbill geranium up here at the front because it will tolerate a little bit more shade, and we are right underneath the peach tree here and right underneath the pawpaw. Also, it is the shortest of the plants. And again, really long succession of blossoms. If I cut this back, I'll get repeat blooms, easy, open-faced blossoms that bees really like. Lastly, I have put my yarrow here because it is low growing and it will fill in here when the daffodils die back to the ground. And it provides sort of a barrier between my daffodils and my Egyptian walking onions, which will fill in this whole area. Now again, I'm really looking for these native strawberries to start taking over here and covering up a lot of this mulch and really fill in for a lush green ground cover. All right, so here is the finished, planted out, for the most part, pawpaw guild. Now, again, still going to put out my Turkish rocket later in the year and my lovage later in the year here. So my pawpaw tree is here. I've got my cranesbill geraniums. I have my scabiosa, my Monarda bee balm, my comfrey. I have the yarrow over here in the corner. I still have the Egyptian walking onions, ground cover strawberries. So I hope that helps give you a little look at some of the potential plants for a pawpaw guild. Remember, there is so much freedom to put what you want, what works for you, for your trees, for your site-specific design with your fruit guilds. Feel like you have the freedom and flexibility to experiment, to try out different things, see if they work, see if they don't. Just keep in mind those goals of supporting pollinators, benefiting your tree, having plants that help shade the ground and conserve water and suppress weeds, and plants that provide yields for you. A yield can be food, medicine, fiber. It can be the benefit of a gorgeous, beautiful flower to look at. So I'll be back later in the summer to show you all three of my pawpaw guilds, this new one, as well as the two that are already more established in other parts of the garden, and talk about how they're radically different. But for now, I'm gonna go put on some sunscreen and get moving some mulch. Thanks.